We need to talk about the final episode of Stranger Things and that ending, because people are really upset about this one and getting it very wrong. After almost a decade, one of Netflix's biggest shows of all time has ended and it is dividing audiences, so let's get into it. In this video, I'll tell you what happened, what I think, and what the writers themselves said about the end. I'll answer questions that you're left with, like where were all the Demogorgons, how did Vecna really get his powers, and what did that ending and post-credits really mean? Is you-know-who actually dead? This is Stranger Things Explained, and if you're new here, I'm MadMorph, welcome and Happy New Year. This is my movie club, I make everything here and no AI is used at all in the making of these videos. Please like and subscribe for more like this, and you can find the rest of my channels and content at madmorph.com, including my bedtime story podcast and my gaming channel. There are links in the description for this video. And this is a club, so if you subscribe to join, be sure to let everyone know what you thought of the finale in a comment below. And now this is Stranger Things Ending Explained. The final ever episode is called The Right Side Up. This is of course a contrast to The Upside Down. It's also the name of the final episode of the first season. The episode starts with the camera looking up at the stars and panning down to Hawkins, which is actually how a lot of the episodes in the show begin. If you do a rewatch, look out for this. It's really important and I haven't seen anyone else talking about it and what it actually means. You'll know from my recap of Season 1 that I've said all along this could be a clue to aliens being involved, and it turns out that's true. We know now that the abyss where the monsters are all from is literally another planet. That they are aliens that are getting to Earth with interdimensional travel. Most of the party are in the Upside Down looking to carry out Project Beanstalk. To catch you up, the Upside Down is in fact a wormhole. It is not another dimension, it's the space between two dimensions, our world and the world called the Abyss, where Henry was sent by 11 originally. I somehow predicted this and Vecna's plan in my Volume 1 video and a short that I made afterwards, and I'm pretty proud of that one. Vecna's plan is to close the gap between the two worlds using the wormhole, aka the Upside Down. He wants to end humanity and create a new world. The gang have to get to the Abyss to stop him before that happens and to rescue the kids. I've seen some people say there were no stakes in this final season, but I don't really know how it gets bigger than saving the entire Earth. Mike says to 11, one last fight and this will be over. They hug, and she goes with Hopper, Carly, and Murray. This team will be going to the Upside Down lab to use the water tank, which will amplify 11's power so she can attack Vecna in his mind. Vecna's actual body is on the other planet, the Abyss, inside his lair, which seems to be a living thing with a heart beating above him. This is where the other team's going to be going to try to rescue the kids. But did you notice? Take a look at Vecna's lair. flip it around, Wicked Witch. It's the MINDFLAYER upside down. We then get this great shot of the POV of the Abyss coming through the clouds towards the Upside Down, and this looks awesome. It's at that point you get the intro, but instead of the full intro with the credits, you just get the title Stranger Things 5. Which instantly made me think we're getting a very special credit sequence at the end, and boy did we. The rest of the group are climbing the tower, which they call the Beanstalk, to try to get into the Abyss, and 11 gets ready to go into the tank to attack Henry. The hope is that when they kill Vecna in his mind, it will stop his plan and stop the planet from moving. Will and Mike take a break whilst they're climbing the tower, which gives Mike a moment to apologize for not being a better friend to Will after finding out what he's been going through. In Volume 2, Will came out to his friends and his family and pretty much everyone in Hawkins who was in the room at the time. He did this to take the power away from Vecna. He had been using his secret to have control over him. This shows Mike's full acceptance of his friend and that him being gay doesn't change anything. This might seem silly to some people today, but this is the 1980s. It's also the end of the Byler theory with a full hard stop if there ever should have been a Byler theory at all. This is the truth. Will's love for Mike is unrequited and that's okay. That has always been their story from the very beginning. From Will being jealous of 11 causing Mike to snap at him and saying it's not my fault you don't like girls, to Will sobbing in the car after having to give Mike a pep talk about getting back with 11. We have seen Will's feelings grow for Mike, but Mike has never been interested in Will. He's always been about 11. It's always been the story and that's okay. It's still a meaningful tale that happens to a lot of people both straight and gay. A young love or crush that doesn't come back to you. I think people can ship who they want and it's all a bit of fun, but some of the Byler fans take it way too seriously and way too far. Meanwhile, Max and Vicky are in the Squawk radio station since Max is in a wheelchair after what Vecna did to her. Max is then able to stand and finds that she's been pulled into 11's mind to work with her and Callie to lead them to Vecna. They need her to help them find their way around his memories because if you remember, Max has spent like a year hidden in Vecna's mind prison. The gang get to the top of the tower and they see the planet coming down on top of them slowly. They're going to be crushed unless 11 stops Vecna, and soon. Just in time, the mind crew find Henry in his own mind and 11 uses her powers to interrupt him. This interrupts the ritual and stops the planet from crushing everyone just as the top of the tower snaps. This sends Steve flying over the edge, gripping on for his life as Dustin screams for him and he lets go and it cuts to black. Everyone watching held their breath and prepared to cry, but we come back to Steve alive. He's been saved by Jonathan. We'll talk more about the character deaths and if the writers got it right or not at the end. For now, the tower crew are in the abyss. They've passed through the rift and are literally on another planet. Somewhere in the universe, perhaps in another dimension, but this is an alien planet. Something that I don't think it's talked about enough is that this is very sci-fi and that the monsters are all aliens. Meanwhile, inside his own mind, Vecna is confronting 11, whilst he doesn't know that the kids that he's kidnapped are watching. They're being hidden by Carly, whilst 11 baits him into revealing that he is the monster. But when they try to actually kill Henry, he disappears. We then get a really nice moment with Steve and Jonathan where they bond a little bit over not liking each other. It reminds me of Eddie and Steve's conversation in the Upside Down in Season 4. Jonathan admits that Steve was there for Nancy when he couldn't be, and he blamed him for the failings of the relationship, but has since realized it was nothing to do with Steve, and that he had to let Nancy go. Steve admits that he realized a while ago that he wasn't right for Nancy himself. I actually love this scene. We just see two men who understand how special Nancy is and that they've both chosen and openly admit I'd rather have her as a friend than nothing at all. They've both accepted that they aren't the guy for her and that that's okay. Also, to talk about media literacy again for a second, I can't believe there was actually a discussion after Volume 2 about whether or not Jonathan and Nancy had broken up. There was actually this really nicely and well-written mature scene where they both confessed their feelings and mutually decided to end things instead of get married, and people couldn't understand if it was a breakup. We're cooked. The tower crew see Vecna's lair and Will confirms that this is what he saw and what he drew on the barn wall in Volume 1. Vecna starts tormenting Hopper. He goes into Hop's mind and shows him the chemicals that he mixed in the Vietnam War that caused his daughter to die. A reminder that Hopper knew that there was a very high likelihood if he had a child it would not end well because of the chemicals that he handled during the war. But he had a daughter anyway, Sarah, and this haunts him. Her death is a massive motivator and trauma for him and everything that he's done in his life since, including taking in 11 and being very, very protective of her. I go into that more in my Season 1 video, but for now what's important is that that's why it's so effective and Vecna uses it to taunt him. He also shows them Callie and 11 talking about their plan to stay behind when the Upside Down goes bye-bye. So Hop tries to shoot Vecna, but actually shoots the tank and 11. So he smashes it and pulls her out to try to save her. But it was a trick, and he fell for it. Vecna made him see it all so that he would pull 11 out of his mind. So Hopper's really put his foot in it because once he's pulled her out, Elle, Callie, and Max are all pulled from Vecna's mind, leaving Holly and the kids alone against Henry. And as a result, the military catches Max and Vicky and they discover the plans for Project Beanstalk. So Holly steps up and becomes Holly the Heroic to lead the kids to the cave, and Elle adapts her plan, deciding to go to the abyss in real life and fight Henry for real. Before she can leave, Hopper confronts her over her plan to stay behind. He says he won't detonate the bomb, which will close the wormhole, unless he knows 11 is back and safe. He begs her to keep going. It's a really beautiful speech. He tells her that she deserves a chance at a real life, that he needs her to fight one last time. This seems to resonate with 11 and with Callie who is watching, and everyone watching at home that's gone through tough times to not give up and to find a way. But we don't find out if she's fully convinced because they're interrupted by the military that show up to try to capture them. They're using that kryptonite weapon that stops Callie and 11 from using their powers. Hopper has to pick 11 up and run away with her, and Callie is almost captured, but Hopper goes back for her and is captured with her. Back in the mind prison, Henry chases the kids to the cave. It's the only place that they should be safe because he's so scared of it, but he forces himself to step inside, as memories of what happened there flood through his mind. We know from the previous volume that when Henry was a child, he went here and found a scientist in the cave with a briefcase. That the scientist tried to shoot Henry and hit him in the hand, and he ended up killing the scientist with a rock. He then opened the briefcase, and you're about to find out what was inside. Also note, during this scene, Holly grabs a lamp, fully becoming her Holly the heroic figure that Mike made for her. The military are gonna kill Carly unless Hop tells them where 11 is, and at the same time Murray blows up the helicopter that has the kryptonite cannons on it. This lets 11 use her powers and she goes beast mode and kills everybody in the room except for Hopper and Carly, which was great to see. People forget how utterly ruthless 11 was. Even as a little kid, she was murdering people with her powers left and right. But when this was all going on, Carly was shot and she dies. Up on the roof, 11 sees rocks that she can use to jump to get into the abyss, a recall to all of her training and the obstacle course in the first episode of the season. But before she goes, her and Hop have another really meaningful moment. This time, she's thanking him for taking her in, for raising her, for protecting her. Clips from the previous season's play as she says, "You became my dad, but I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm not Sarah," which made my jaw drop. 11 takes the friendship bracelet off that belongs to Hopper's kid and gives it back, saying she didn't have a choice, but I do. I need you to trust me to make the right choice. It's a beautiful coming-of-age moment. Stranger Things is and always has been a coming-of-age story about growing up, friends and family, both found and blood. And this is 11's moment. It's her flying the nest and Hopper having to let her go. Henry's following the kids, but Holly actually attacks him to try to buy the other kids some time in a very brave moment, but he knocks her out. And Henry relives the memory of what happened with the scientist. At the same time, Will is seeing this through Henry's eyes and experiencing it. We see little Henry open the briefcase and find a glowing rock. It glows with the red of the dimensional rifts that we've seen before, and he picks it up in the hand that he was shot in by the scientist. It seems to activate, and we see Henry transported in his mind to have a vision of the MINDFLAYER. It's like a giant storm cloud off on this planet, and it says, "Find me." And when he looks back down, the rock has turned into a spiraling MINDFLAYER-like strand that goes into the hole in his hand, and this is the moment that Henry gets his powers and is changed forever. The scientist tells him, "You must resist it. It will consume you. It will consume all." A warning. And we see the MINDFLAYER for a split second fully take over Henry and pop the guy's head, telling us that it's always been the MINDFLAYER from the very beginning, as Will talks to Henry in his mind saying, "You were just like me." That Henry was just a vessel just like Will, that the MINDFLAYER was using him for his own plans. Will begs Henry to join them, to fight it, to not let it win. But Henry says, "It showed me the truth, that the world is broken, that man is broken. It never controlled me, and I never controlled it. I could have resisted it, but I chose to join it. It needs me, and I need it. We are one." And while he's saying this, we're seeing the physical form of the new MINDFLAYER coming to life. That layer of Vecna with a beating heart inside is actually the monster that pulls itself out of the ground, and it's like a giant spider monster that roars. What's interesting here is that Henry, aka Vecna, aka 1, is just like Will and 11 in more ways than one. But he chose not to resist. He aligned himself with the MINDFLAYER. He chose the dark side, if you want to think of it in like Star Wars or good and evil terms. He may well have been manipulated by the MINDFLAYER at a young age, but fully states now that he's chosen to side with it. It's a direct contrast to Will and 11, but I'll explain this properly at the end, as well as what that stone was and why it gave him powers. I'll also talk more about what the MINDFLAYER is and what this physical form actually is. Personally, the one thing I really didn't want to see from the finale was a Vecna/Henry redemption or any passing of the blame onto the MINDFLAYER, so I really liked this scene and Vecna actually owning all of the evil stuff that he's done. The writers, the Duffers, have said that part is actually intentional, that yes, perhaps he may have been manipulated as a child, but they really wanted to make it clear that Henry is now choosing this path. Now this monster is here and chases everyone. I love anything with big monsters, so this was pretty fun. Lucas gets a hero moment saving Dustin, and right when it captures them all and everyone's about to die, the Flayer is hit by a giant rock in the side of the head. 11 has made it just in time to use her powers and save her friends. She jumps up at it, uses her mind powers to rip it open, and lands inside to fight Vecna in the real world. The party realize that while she's fighting Vecna inside, it hurts the Flayer, so if they fight the Flayer on the outside, it will hurt Vecna within. This is because all of the monsters are part of the same hive mind. So Nancy acts as bait to lure the MINDFLAYER into a position where the party can attack it. It's one of those great coming together moments where everyone in the crew gets something to do. Nancy lures it in, the gang target its weak spots like they're fighting a boss in a video game. Or Dungeons and Dragons, with Lucas using his slingshot with gasoline balloons that are lit up by Mike's flare gun, and Dustin and Steve going underneath to stab a load of eggs while screaming, "This is for Eddie." And inside, 11 uses her powers to try to push Vecna back onto a fang. She almost has him there, and he reaches out with the hand of Vecna and almost gets her, but is stopped by Will. He has again accessed his sorcerer powers, tapping into the hive mind, and holds Vecna back, saying, "I'm not afraid anymore, we're not afraid of you," and he snaps Vecna's arm clean off. And then 11 can finally shove Vecna back onto the fang and impale him, and the Flayer falls. The party did it. They've won, all of them working together. The heart of the Flayer stops beating and shrivels up, and they start to rescue the kids. I thought this was a great final battle in my opinion, but some people aren't so sure. What did you think? Let everyone know in a comment. Whilst they're rescuing the kids, Vecna starts to gurgle and splutter. He's still alive. But Joyce walks in, and she's armed with the axe that she had from season 1. She looks at Vecna and she remembers the pain that he's caused her from what he did to Will and to Bob's death. She starts to chop, and every chop is a different memory and another trauma for a different character in the party. Holly sees a Demogorgon attack her mother. Jonathan sees Will suffering in season 2. Lucas sees himself holding Max when she was dead. Nancy sees her best friend Barbara that she lost in season 1. Dustin sees Eddie, who died in season 4. Mike sees 11 leaving him at the end of season 1. 11 sees her past fighting Henry in the Rainbow Room when she sent him here. And Will sees the moment that he was taken and when the Mind Flayer first went inside him. And for every one of those memories, Joyce swings until a last swing takes Vecna's head clean off. There is a quiet amongst the group who stare and have a moment of acceptance and relief that they've won, and that Vecna is gone. To me, this was one of the coolest and most impactful endings for a villain like Vecna that fed on fear and trauma and caused them so much hurt and pain. The way they cut scenes from the previous seasons into it with every chop of the axe, it felt really good. If you watched the show the last 10 years and you felt the weight of these moments being lifted from each character. Although I will say Steve and Robin didn't get a callback here, and I want to know what scene you would have put in there for Steve or for Robin. I feel like it can be taken two ways. One is that Steve doesn't actually have any super emotional callbacks. He's had a lot of almost deaths in the show and been through a lot of fights, but there's not one big Steve trauma that he's carried with him. The other is that Steve is actually just a pretty little himbo, kind of an airhead, and actually isn't really that traumatized by anything that's happened to him, so he doesn't really need a moment to let go of. It's kind of hilarious if you think about it. So they've won, and it's time to get out, because it's not over yet. We cut to the party all together, back in the Upside Down now, who give word to Hopper and Murray to start the countdown of the bomb. The bomb is attached to a record that'll go off when it stops playing, and it starts with When Doves Cry by Prince. Once this record ends, the bomb's gonna go off, and the Upside Down will be gone forever. So the gang are driving back with the kids in the truck, taking them to safety, but when they exit the Upside Down and get back to the real world, their tires are spiked because the military's waiting for them. They want 11, and they've got the kryptonite cannons with them, but 11 is missing. Dustin says she must have escaped, and Mike looks relieved for all of 2 seconds, but then he spots her on the other side of the gate, still in the Upside Down. And Mike tries to get loose and go to her, but he's then inside her mind. She's using her powers to communicate with him one last time. She wants Mike to tell the others thank you for being kind to her, for teaching her what it means to be a friend. They have a final goodbye, with flashbacks to all their moments through the seasons, and the fact that this show has taken 10 years to finish gives these a lot of power. We literally see these people as kids, and then as teens we watch them grow up through these seasons. It's cute and it's powerful. Mike begs her not to leave. She says, "I'll always be with you. I love you," and kisses him before, "Goodbye, Mike." A callback to what she said at the end of season 1 when she left for the first time. And while they're kissing and this is going on, Purple Rain by Prince is playing, and then Mike is back in the real world screaming for Elle as the song starts to end. We see all of the party reacting to what Elle is doing, all of her friends wishing that she wouldn't sacrifice herself. And the bomb goes off, exploding the exotic matter in a crazy-looking blue explosion with flashes of red from the Upside Down. Red and blue, flip it around, what does it make? Purple Rain. As the entire replica world of Hawkins is blown away and the wormhole closes with Elle inside. And there is silence, and everyone looks up to see that the gate is gone, and Elle with it. We cut to black, and it's 18 months later. Robin is back on the radio and narrating our epilogue, letting us know that Hawkins has gone back to normal, that the military have now all left, but what happens next for everyone? We see Steve coaching Little League Baseball and Derek is there. It's a cute nod to his babysitting ways and his iconic use of a baseball bat as a weapon in the early seasons. It's graduation day for all of the kids, and Max is skating and her and Lucas kiss. Erica is building a gadget in the garage, and Dustin is getting his photo taken by his mum. Hopper and Joyce are together, and Jonathan films them as Will gets ready to go to graduation. Honestly, they did Hop so dirty here. It's only been 18 months and he looks like he's aged about 10 to 15 years. To be fair, it's probably been a very rough 18 months grieving 11, but good lord did they need to make him look 80 years old. Hopper goes to find Mike and he finds him at the memorial for everyone lost in the Great Earthquake. Mike says he can't go to graduation because it represents being okay with moving on, and he's not. He says that his plan to go far away with Elle to the Three Waterfalls was stupid, childish, and a fantasy. He wishes he came up with a real plan so she might have believed in him and stayed. Hopper tells him it's not his fault. He says that Elle made her choice and now he has to make his. He's at two roads. One road is to blame yourself for what happened, push people away, and suffer. The road that Hopper has walked since Sarah died. The second road is finding a way to accept her choice, to live with what happened. You don't have to like it or understand it, you just have to accept it. Telling us that this is what Hopper has been doing since, and it's what we will have to do as an audience as well. For Hopper, his journey with Elle and allowing her to make a choice has helped him finally deal with his grief for Sarah and accept this new grief for 11, completing Hopper's character arc as he comes to terms with his own pain and trauma. The kids all graduate and Dustin is valedictorian, so he gets to give a speech and he talks about how everyone came together in the chaos, how he made friends with people he never would have. It's about acceptance and accepting yourself and becoming a better person. He literally says, "I'm not pissed off anymore," bringing his own trauma and healing full circle. He pulls his graduation outfit off and he has a Hellfire Lives t-shirt on underneath. He shouts, "This is our year," and grabs his diploma and gives the principal the finger. This is all in honor of what Eddie Munson said he was going to do when he graduated. In season 4, he said, "I'm going to walk that stage next month, look Principal Higgins dead in the eye. I'm going to flip him the bird, snatch that diploma, and I'm going to run like hell out of here." And did you notice that the song playing is Iron Maiden Trooper, which Eddie holds up the cassette of when he screams, "This is music" in season 4. I found this whole thing a very touching tribute to Eddie, who is probably the most affecting death in all of the show. But here's what you need to pay attention to is Mike noticing the speakers, which gives him a bit of a flashback to the kryptonite cannons. You'll find out what this means in just a minute. We see Stacy hit on Dustin in a callback to the snowball at the end of season 2. If you remember, he asked her to dance and she said no, so Nancy danced with him. She told him when he's older the girls will go crazy for him, and it looks like she was right. Stacy invites them all to her party, but Mike says, "I have a better idea." We find out the fates of the teens. They're all on the roof of the Squawk. Jonathan, Nancy, and Robin have all left Hawkins, and Steve has stayed behind. Steve's got that classic ending of probably never leaving this small town. He's saving up to buy a house, he's coaching the baseball team, and teaching sex ed. He's happy here. He's working with children, and it is a great ending for him. Jonathan is at NYU, a film school, making an artsy symbolic movie. We know this has always been his dream from when Joyce talks to Lonnie in a previous season. Robin is at Smith, an all-women's liberal arts college, and Nancy went to Emerson but dropped out and has taken a trainee job at the Herald, a newspaper. She's going to become a journalist. They all agree that they miss each other though, and they get emotional, so Steve suggests they meet up once a month in Philadelphia. Joyce and Hopper at last get their date at Enzo's. Hop says they should leave and move to Montauk now the boys are going to college. Fun fact, Montauk was the original name for Stranger Things when it was going to be set on the coast. Hop proposes to Joyce and she says yes, and they're going to get married and start a new life together properly as they slow dance to At Last by Ella Fitzgerald. And finally we cut to a sprinkler just like the first ever episode as we join the party in Mike's basement playing Dungeons and Dragons. Mike sets the scene for them to fight their next villain, a vampire called Strahd. They actually shoot this scene and move the camera in the exact same way as the first episode as a callback. Will the Wise is again the only one left and it's his move. They think they're defeated, but remember they can call upon a mage that they met earlier, and they win the campaign and Mike wraps it up. The mage, of course, represents Elle and her saving the group. But Max says, "That's it? Comfort and happiness? Could you be more trite? I thought you were some kind of master storyteller," which feels like a little self-rib from the Duffers to themselves, knowing that the audience will be saying this about their ending. And so Mike fills us in, giving us a flash forward of each character's future, and this is pretty brilliant. Let me explain. He describes it about their characters in the D&D campaign, but it's meant to represent the real-world people. He sees the Knight and the Zoomer, that's Max and Lucas, retiring and settling down in a small village. He says their love will grow stronger every day, and we see them in a cinema on a date. The bard, which is Dustin, makes his way to an enclave and spends his days in a library. We see Dustin at college studying, and still hanging out with Steve Harrington. He's pulled up in an RV, and it looks like they go on adventures together, as he says this is what the bard does. Will the Wise, which is obviously Will, travels to a bustling city, and we see him in real life making his way to city life in a bar and hanging out with a boy, where he'll find happiness and acceptance. But Will asks the storyteller, what about him? And Mike says he keeps telling stories, inspired by his friends. And we see Mike writing in his room with the painting from Will on his wall, but he can never tell the story of the mage, and he reveals his theory about 11 to his friends. How did the mage cast the spell if there is a suppression stone? Which translates to, how did 11 use her powers to talk to Mike in her mind if the kryptonite was nearby? That's what he realized earlier at graduation when he was looking at the speakers. So his theory is that Carly was still alive and used her powers to hide 11 from the military at the end. That Elle escaped, and the Elle that they saw die was an illusion created by Carly. They faked her death so she could start a new life in a land far away. We see 11 in Iceland with 2 waterfalls, just like in Mike's fantasy ending that had 3. But the party admit they can't know for sure. Mike says, I believe. And in turn, the party all say, I believe. But do you, dear listener? Let everyone know in a comment. We'll dive deeper into this in a moment, but now they're interrupted by Karen Wheeler. And they end their campaign. They put their character sheets away on the shelf one by one and leave the basement. Symbolic of the adventure being at an end, put on the shelf, and growing up. Mike is the last to put his away and cries. He makes his way upstairs just as Holly and her friends come running downstairs to start their own campaign, with Holly as Dungeon Master. For a moment, Mike watches on from the top of the stairs, and there's a sadness to it at first as he realizes his own childhood is over. All of this is over, and he smiles. And he leaves and closes the door. As Heroes by David Bowie plays, as a very cool credit sequence plays, celebrating all of the characters like they are character sheets in a D&D book. Heroes is a reprise from when they find Will's fake body and think he's dead in Season 1. Then it was the sad version by Peter Gabriel, but here it's the original and much happier version. This was actually suggested by Joe Keery, who plays Steve. The Duffers said, once Joe said that, we immediately knew it was the right song to end the show on, because in some ways it's an anthem for Stranger Things. To use the original Bowie version felt right and fitting for the conclusion. And with that, the episode, the season, and the entire show of Stranger Things ends. But what did this ending really mean? And is 11 really alive? Is what Mike was saying the true future for our heroes? And what about all of those plot holes and questions that people are left with? Let's get into it in the Ending Explained, but first, if you haven't already, remember to subscribe and hit that like button, and leave a comment to let the almighty algorithm know that you want to see more videos like this one. Feed the mind flayer that is the YouTube algo. So what did the ending mean? What we know for sure is that all of the stuff leading up to Mike talking is true. Everyone else's ending is real, but everything that Mike says is through the lens of Mike as a narrator, and how reliable that is up to you. The flash forwards for everyone are his best guess as a storyteller for what their lives will be like, his hopes and dreams for them, if you will, that represent our own as the audience, and for the most part they're probably true. But there's no guarantee that we're seeing actual flash forwards. They could just be what Mike thinks. Personally, I think they're very likely, but the real ambiguity comes in with what happened to 11. There are some really important points to consider here, so let's go through it. Is 11 alive? If the kryptonite cannons were acting as a suppression stone and suppressing her powers, how did she bring Mike into her mind space to say goodbye to him? If we agree that Callie was making that illusion to fake her death, then 11 could have been elsewhere at the time and using her powers from far away to cast that on him. Or maybe because Elle is on the other side of the gate, the cannons can't affect her, so once on the other side she could use her powers to communicate with Mike. But then the question becomes, when we know that the kryptonite cannons debilitate her to the point of needing to be carried by Hopper, how did she get out of the back of the truck, being grabbed by the military, and then cross the gate back into the Upside Down? Option 3. What if she was never there at all? What if beyond a certain point Carly was using her powers to make the party think that Elle was in the truck? So the illusion disappeared from the truck and the real Elle is elsewhere using her powers to say goodbye to Mike. That one perhaps seems the most likely if you want to believe that she's alive. Some people say evidence of this is Derek smiling at Mike in the back of the truck. That only Mike could see 11, so he was smiling at her, but Derek thought that Mike was smiling at him. This is completely wrong. You are barking up the wrong tree with that one. Derek smiles and waves awkwardly because he looks up to Mike. He hero worships him. This is evident in the previous volume when he says to Holly, "I'm best friends with your brother now." It's the kind of thing you did as a kid when you wanted someone else's big brother to be your best friend just because you thought they were so cool. Also, the rest of the party definitely see Elle in the back, or they would have been asking where she is. They never would have left her behind. It's not like Mike is the only one that cares about her, and Dustin even says to Hopper that yes, 11 is with them. There are lots of questions about this that we're left with that feel like plot holes to make us question why and what is real. We have to remind ourselves that that is the intention. It was written this way to mirror what Hopper said to Mike, how you can question it for your whole life and try to understand it. But you've got to accept that you can't. You just have to accept that it happened and try to move on. You don't have to like it. You don't have to not think about it, but you have to accept it. We as the audience have to do that. We have to choose. Do we think that she sacrificed herself, or do we think it was an illusion and that she's living a new life somewhere? I think they have purposely written it that way so that it feels like plot holes and you will drive yourself crazy if you try to work it out. So do you believe? Drop it in a comment. Do you think she survived or that she sacrificed herself? My first thought was that she definitely sacrificed herself and this was Mike's way of coping, but on a rewatch, I felt the other way about it. I thought maybe he's right, and maybe on a rewatch I'll feel another way about it. It all comes down to belief, and we'll probably never know. Because all the Duffers have said is that it's left up to the viewers to decide. They said, for the Hawkins crew, she lives on in their hearts, whether it's real or not, confirming it's intentionally ambiguous and totally up to us. They also said there was never going to be an ending where 11 could actually be with the party. It just always made sense that for them to move on from everything that happened, she had to go away. Which I totally agree with. My theory for 11 was always going to be that she would perhaps be left in the Upside Down, or something would happen that left her without her powers for life to go back to normal. But is it Henry or the Mind Flayer that is actually responsible for everything? Henry tells you the answer to this himself when he says, "We are one." Henry/Vecna has been both a combination of himself and the Mind Flayer since he was a child and went into that cave. It was let into him when he found that rock and he chose not to resist it over time and joined the dark side, joining the Mind Flayer in its hate of humans and working together to bring about an end of Earth. Henry is the opposite of 11 and Will. In Season 2, we saw the process of Will resisting it with the help of his family and friends, them working to save Will from the Flayer in that almost exorcism-like scene. With memories of love and friendship, they saved him from the dark path and being a vessel for the Mind Flayer. Henry, as one, is also an opposite to 11. He was turned bad by his experiences, shown by the Mind Flayer how man was broken, which was backed up by what he experienced around him and the experiments done on him by Brenner. The terrible things that they did to him only reinforced this view and led him to the dark side. 11 had a very similar experience, upbringing, and treatment. Her life taken from her, her mother, all the things Hopper said, but she's continued to fight for the side of what's good and right. She is again able to stay on the path of good because of the memory of her mother's love, the kindness of her friends, and her love of Mike. You can see these three as parallels for how people react differently to trauma in their life and carrying on after bad things happen or are done to them. Henry spins out, becomes a villain. He is the abused that becomes an abuser, whilst Will and 11 are those that resist and fight to end that generational trauma. But what is the Mind Flayer? Some people think this, what we've seen in this finale, is the true final form of the Mind Flayer, that this is somehow how the monster existed most of the time, and I just don't think that's true. I think this is just another form for the hive mind and the Flayer to take. I think the truest form that you see of the Mind Flayer is the storm cloud that Henry sees as a child, or how he sees it when he first arrives to the Abyss as an adult. This monster's spider body for the final battle was created just like it was in Season 3. We even see a mini version of it in the hospital, which then liquefied and went back to its main form. I actually think that this might be all of the Demogorgons, Demodogs, and Demobats that originate from and are made of the same parts, put together in one giant monster. That would explain why it's all a hive mind and they're all connected. I think the Mind Flayer itself might be the only sentient being here on this planet. The Mind Flayer is quite literally an alien. Think of it like a cosmic entity in the same way that it is, especially with the taking of different forms. It was a massive influence on this show. It came here on a meteorite, and I think the Mind Flayer did the same. The rock came from outer space for this purpose. sent here with MINDFLAYER particles on, looking for a vessel. Or maybe it got here through a temporary gate or a dimensional rift, but either way, it's here, and it's been being studied by scientists. We can only guess that the Flayer's plan all along was to find a vessel, someone it could use and work with to enact its plan, which as the scientist says is to consume. You might want or feel like you need more answers than that for what the Flayer is and what it was planning, but things like this don't always have to answer every question. The lore works much better and cosmic entities are much scarier when we don't fully understand them. Sometimes that's how art and storytelling works best. We don't always have to know everything, and sometimes they can just show and not tell. It gives you things to talk about long after the show has ended. But here's the big question that I see a lot of people talking about, and that is, should more people have died in this finale? There's a lot of people upset that more people didn't die during this season, saying that they faked out so many deaths so many times and then just didn't do it. I've even seen people calling the Duffers cowards for the way that they wrote this. But I think you're very, very wrong. That is how a lot of adventures work, especially in the 80s and the types of movies that this show takes inspiration from. Think how many times Indiana Jones almost dies during a movie, or James Bond, or any character in an action movie that you can think of, especially action adventures. There are many, many near-death experiences, and the hero usually comes through in the end. That is one way that storytelling can build tension and show stakes. There's nowhere that says if you have a character almost die, they must die at some point. This is not Final Destination, but it's a very strange and interesting point of view that people have become this way. I myself have fell victim to this, theorizing who's going to die, thinking surely some big characters must, and I think we all know why. We're all traumatized from Game of Thrones, the last monoculture television event that everybody watched. It has not only us all looking out for the next big shocking death, but showrunners and writers trying to force that to happen in their shows for a big red wedding shock moment because everyone's going to talk about it. It certainly worked recently for Welcome to Derry. But that doesn't mean that has to happen here. And I kind of love that the Duffers just came out and said, we're not Game of Thrones, there isn't going to be a red wedding. And I honestly think it was the right thing to do for their story, and I love the decisions that they made. I don't need half of the characters to die to enjoy the story. I don't need to be mourning Steve every time I think about this show. Sure, you could kill a bunch of people and have it feel more powerful, get more people talking about it and make everyone cry. But if it's not the story they wanted to tell, and more importantly, if it's not the feeling that they wanted to leave you with and the note they wanted to land on, then it's not something that they should have felt forced to do. This is, and always was, a fun 80s-inspired adventure. You don't watch The Goonies or E.T. and get mad that they didn't kill half the cast by the end. As for that post-credits reveal of a Dungeons & Dragons player manual, but it's Stranger Things themed, no, this does not mean the whole thing was a D&D campaign. It's the closing of the book of the credits, the end of the adventure, and a fun, cheeky reference to how the kids related everything that they experienced to D&D. If it exists in the actual world of the show, then it's created by Mike in the future as a writer based on their adventures. I can't believe people are actually saying that this is some kind of reveal, that it was actually all in Mike's head. That is ridiculous. But also I need Netflix to release this as an actual piece of merchandise because I would buy it in a heartbeat. Personally, I loved the finale, and I was not a big fan of Volume 2. I didn't even bother to make a video about it because it fell far below my expectations, and I really only talk about things that I really enjoy. I think that they had the perfect ending though. They clearly knew how they wanted it to end and maybe had to milk those middle chapters out so that Netflix had a full season, but if you just put this finale after what happened in Volume 1, it's great. Sure, some of the acting has dipped as the kids grew up. Yes, some of the writing has been cheesy, but the show has always been that way. At the end of the day, I had a great time watching this finale, and I feel very, very satisfied by the conclusion. I was very happy with it. If you weren't, that's okay too. Not everything has to be for you. But honestly, I hope you find stuff that you do enjoy, because the way that television shows are going, this might be the last monoculture big television event that you see for a very, very long time. So do try and find the things that you love and enjoy and embrace them. I'll be sharing the stuff that I find that I enjoy here on the channel, so like and subscribe for more like this. And that is Stranger Things Explained. Please do remember to like and subscribe. Check out those videos on the screen for more like this and my other explains. I've got one for Volume 1, I've got a whole Season 1 recap, and I usually end up doing a bunch of horror movies on here throughout the year. You can find my other channels and my links below in the description or going to madmorph.com, and make sure you let everyone know what you thought of the finale in a comment below. If you loved it, let them know. If you didn't like it, let us know why. It's always fun to see people talking about the stuff that we watch together here on the club. Until next time, thank you for watching, and good night.